People pay attention to what's in front of them and what you're telling them to focus on. So if you're focusing on the revenue, you can't be mad at them when that is what they focus on when thinking about themselves. So I want you to think about a small shift here, okay? This doesn't mean that you have to pull out the P&L every time you talk about money. But if you're going to say things like, hey, guys, we're going to make $5 million this year. That's our goal. You want to also remind them that, the expenses that the firm is going to have are going to be X, right? You can give raw numbers if you want to. You can say, the firm is going to make $5 million this year and we're going to have $4 million in expenses. So it's really important that we make that $5 million so we can pay our expenses and have heavy profit. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, where today's episode is going to be dedicated to the topic of building a money positive culture in your law firm. So I'm excited to talk to you about this topic because this is one of those topics that comes up over and over and over again when we are in our coaching community and Law Firm Mentor talking to lawyers about money, and in particular, how to talk to other people about money. Money is a very loaded topic in our culture. We very much have different attitudes around it. There's very much a have and have not, almost an adversarial stance regarding money. If you're somebody who desires to make more money, people oftentimes will judge you and label you. If you are somebody who has always had money, people will cast aspersions and undervalue what you're able to contribute, assuming that you got it because you came from a family or came from a background where you had money. And so it is very challenging oftentimes for someone who earns a six-figure salary or multiple six-figure salary or even a seven-figure salary to be able to have a conversation with people who are earning $20 an hour, $30 an hour, $50 an hour about how money is important in a law firm for a variety of reasons that really have nothing to do with compensation, but oftentimes do very much impact compensation. And one of the things that I see lawyers struggle with a lot is they very much want to be generous with their teams. They want their teams to know that they recognize that they have families to support, recognize that they want them to do well as the firm does well, but they don't know how to talk about it in a way that makes their team feel that there is a value to the employee chasing dollars the same way that the owner is chasing dollars. In fact, there's almost kind of an unwritten rule in a lot of law firms that we just don't talk about money, right? We don't talk about what we earn. We don't talk about negotiating it. We don't talk about how we're going to pursue more for it. It's simply we pay our employees, we pay them what we feel we can afford and what we think it's worth for the job that they perform. And we hope that nobody comes along and offers them more, at least not in a way that would induce them to leave. And that's just not practical in today's climate, especially because as the legal community is aging, just like every other population, right? Every other community of employees, the legal community is aging. And now we are seeing fewer and fewer candidates who have a reasonable amount of experience being available for a legal position, right? A lot of people go to law school now to have that credential for other reasons. And we've always had lawyers go to law school to have the credential, having no intention to practice law. But I think now, because there are more resources available to the public that give them the appearance that they can actually get legal advice without having a lawyer, okay, let's not get into that whole debate, but that's what people think. There is an attitude about lawyering that has seeped in and made it challenging in ways that a lot of people are just not prepared to meet. And so a lot of law firms are struggling to get legal talent in, and throwing dollars at it, throwing dollars at people seems to be the best way to get the best people. And undoubtedly, talented people want to be and deserve to be compensated well. But it's more than just compensation. It really is the entire attitude around money. Because you can have a highly compensated person who comes to work, does a great job, but doesn't call clients when the bill is due. Does not stop working on files when a client has stopped paying, right? Being highly compensated does not correlate directly with having your firm's best financial interests at heart. Because at the end of the day, The employee is going to get their paycheck, whether the firm gets paid or not, because that's the law. Now, most reasonable lawyers are going to say they care about how their firm does, right? They want to keep their job. They don't want their employer going out of business. But it's certainly not going to be the highest priority. So how do you shift that? How do you get people that are employed in your company to care as much about the bottom line as you do? Well, there's some very little but very strategic tweaks that you can make that you can start to inculcate your culture with a positive money mindset. And it really does take intentionality around how you speak about money, when you speak about money, and how you connect the firm's success to the success of others, both the employees, the clients, people outside of just the owners of the law firm, in order to get people to really care about it at the level that you do. So today, that's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about some things you can do, some very easy and strategic moves you can make in order to have a better money mindset around your law firm. Now, before we dive into this, I think it's important to note that you are going to turn some people off when you start talking about money, right? Undoubtedly, there are always going to be people who had such a negative relationship with money, have, doesn't matter, past tense or present tense, that they are not going to be able to hear a message about money without writing their own story around your motivations, without drawing their own conclusions and making their own assumptions around what's really happening when you start talking about money more. And they oftentimes will write the story that you're the evil villain who is just out to oppress. Because right now, at this time in history, this is not new, since this current political stage. This is not new in terms of this generation. I would say it's new in terms of the last 2 or 3 generations. But resources versus lack of resources, there really is now a schism, and it grows stronger and stronger every year around those that have and those that don't have, right? It's almost like the ruler class and the peasant class. That's the mindset that people will approach these topics with. So even when you have a benevolent owner who wants to see everyone doing well, who gives lavish holiday parties and gives holiday bonuses and talks to people about their families and really tries to do everything that they can to maximize the success of others, at some point, you have to recognize that people are going to have whatever beliefs they have about money, and you can't control that, right? You can't ex post facto rewrite their history, their family of origin, their story around money in their childhood, and how they brought that forward into their adulthood. So it's very real, and it's very possible that you will start talking about money with all of the right strategic moves, and it will still ultimately result in an employee having a negative taste in their mouth, not wanting to hear about money, not being emotionally mature enough to hear about money, and choosing to leave your law firm. And here's the thing. That's a good thing for you. And I know it doesn't feel like it, because if the employee is otherwise capable, you don't want to lose them, right? You want them to stay on the team. But here's the thing. When you're building a law firm, you're not just building a group of people who are doing a job for a rate of pay that is less than what you make, right? That's how you get to having profit in a law firm. But that's not how you get to building a law firm. When you are building a law firm, you are building a culture. The culture is the sum total of the people who comprise the culture, led by the ethos of the culture. So if the ethos of your culture is one that is very constricted around money, then no matter how good the people are, you are going to have outcomes that evidence the fact that you have a constriction around money. On the flip side, if you have a positive money mindset, and that is the ethos that you have brought into your law firm, and you have inculcated your culture of good people with that mindset, you're going to have outcomes that are consistent with that mindset. Okay? Money goes where it is invited, and it stays where it is welcomed. So if you welcome money into your orbit, and you continue to nurture the relationship that you have with money throughout the way in which you interact with others, that is going to be the foundation of your culture. And there really is no avoiding that. And you don't want people in your business who are just not compatible with your culture. whether it's compatibility around how you treat your clients or how you seek advancement in the company, how we interact with our team members. It's all of those things, right? But it also at the core is how we find success in life. And money is a big part of that. And there's no avoiding that in the legal profession. In fact, in some ways, I would say you have an even higher responsibility to develop a positive money mindset in a law firm, because people that are drawn to law oftentimes do so because of a desire for financial success, especially if they're working in the private sector. So recognizing that that is what people want, you have to get your mind up around and beyond the idea that all that that means is that you have to write a large check to them, right? Because again, as I said before, being able to pay someone well and having a person have a high salary does not inherently correlate with that person's intuitive desire to have a positive interaction with clients, employees, etc. around money, right? You would think that someone who desires money would develop all of the right mindset tools in order to grow it, sustain it, etc. But that's just not the case, right? Sometimes people are pursuing the outcome, which is the higher paycheck, without all of the foundational pillars that really help them to understand the value of money and why they are earning and deserving of that high paycheck. So let's talk now cold turkey about these strategies that we're going to go through that can help you to actually create a positive money culture in your law firm. So the first thing I want to make sure that we start with, this is one of the most important things that you have to get right in the conversation, is you want to avoid talking about raw numbers on revenue unless you pair that with talking raw numbers on expenses. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, one of the big things that I see a lot of people do wrong when they first start talking about money in their law firms is they say, all right, team, we're in it to make $5 million this year. Woo-hoo-hoo, right? And the number is big and sexy and you're all excited about it. And you think that you're bringing people into that conversation positively. Well, here's the problem. When people hear this is how much revenue we're making, but they're not hearing these are our expenses that eat that revenue, they have that big number in mind and they're comparing that big number to what they earn. So somebody who's making $50,000 a year who hears, oh, my law firm made $5 million this year, is not going to have a great appreciation for that, right? Not everyone's going to have resentment around it. A lot of people intellectually understand if your job is a lower compensated job, then the fact that there is a high number in the company where you work doesn't mean that the boss is eating all of that $5 million in bonbons while you're slaving away at a hot desk. But some people will, right? We have to remember, people pay attention to what's in front of them and what you're telling them to focus on. So if you're focusing on the revenue and you're not giving them anything else to focus on, you can't be mad at them when that is what they focus on when thinking about themselves. So I want you to think about a small shift here, okay? This doesn't mean that you have to pull out the P&L every time you talk about money. But if you're going to say things like, hey, guys, we're going to make $5 million this year. That's our goal. That's what we're pushing toward. You want to also remind them that, the expenses that the firm is going to have are going to be X, right? You can give raw numbers if you want to. You can say, the firm is going to make $5 million this year and we're going to have $4 million in expenses. So it's really important that we make that $5 million so we can pay our expenses and have heavy profit, right? And by the way, when you talk about profit, you can talk about profit from an analytical perspective, like defining it. Profit includes money left over after we have paid our expenses, but it also is money that we use to weather the storms of economic downturn. It is money that we use when we want to invest in buying businesses, in expanding in different practice areas, in compensating people more generously, right? So people should have in their mind that that money is not just money in your pocket, even though you as the owner of the company who took all the risks to create the company are 100% entitled to that money, okay? So I just want you to keep that in mind. Again, revenue and expenses, they go hand in hand. Most people, if they are in any way involved in their own personal finance, if they're running their personal budget, they'll understand. I bring home my paycheck, but my paycheck doesn't just go in my pocket. My paycheck has rent or a mortgage. My paycheck has a car note. My paycheck has groceries and so forth. Okay. All right. Strategy number 2 is you want to discuss firm goals, but you want to tie those goals to rewards for your team. Okay. So what we mean by that is you want to think about the idea that people need to hear that there is something in it for them, right? What's in it for me? Something we all have heard about, WIFM, WIIFM. What's in it for me? That is a concept that is just innate in the human being, right? If I am doing something day by day, I want to know that I'm doing it for some reason that matters to me. And oftentimes when we start to hear other people, our employers, talk about what the goals of the company are, while yes, an employee wants the company to be successful because they want to keep their job, they don't want to get terminated because the business goes out of business, at the same time, pushing extra, working harder, doing more for the benefit of the company to do well, when the presumption of the employee is that the company is doing well, is not usually going to cut it. They have to have something more specific to them that is going to motivate them to say, hey, I need to work harder, do more, get this accomplished so that I can achieve my goal of X, right? Whatever your goal is. The goal could be a personal goal, like I want to save up a certain amount of money to buy a house, or it could be I am contributing toward my child's college fund, or it could be something more esoteric, like I want to help the firm to achieve this goal so that I can feel fulfilled in helping more clients to achieve their goal, right? Whether it's helping more immigrants to become naturalized citizens, or helping more business owners to shore up their business foundation with IP, or helping families to separate in a way that preserves the integrity of their relationships for their kids. Whatever your practice area is, there is something on the other side of it, right? And so you serve a purpose, and your business purpose is oftentimes the reason why people do the work that they do, right? A secretary is not just a secretary. She's a secretary in a particular type of law firm. A paralegal is not just a paralegal. He's a paralegal in a particular type of law firm. So you have to keep in mind that there is something in it for them just by virtue of being with you, and finding out what that is and then tailoring your message to that is going to be far more effective than simply talking about the firm goal, the firm goal, the firm goal. Okay, next up, I want you to think about personal goals. And this is something that is a little controversial, but I stand by it 100%. The strategy that we're talking about now is requiring that each member of your team identify a personal goal that will motivate them to help you reach the firm goal. And they have to share it with their division head so that when they are having one-to-one meetings, when they are having meetings to help them to evaluate their performance, to improve their performance, or even just optimize an already stellar performance, you have something that is meaty and weighty for them that will motivate them in the process. Okay? Now, I say it's somewhat controversial because what we're talking about is really requiring people to tell you something about themselves that they might not have otherwise been inclined to, right? Now, this doesn't mean that people have to open up their heart and tell you their deepest hearts and dreams and biggest desires in life, even though hopefully you're building the kind of trust with your team that they would desire to do that. But really, we're more talking about what is a goal that you can help your team member to create and achieve for themselves that is going to be linked to the firm's success for the year. So, for instance, if an employee says, my dream is to be able to move from this part of town to another part of town, and I need to be able to save up to secure, a loan to be able to buy a nicer piece of real estate. And I've got X dollars saved and I want to contribute toward that. Well, maybe you could help them by saying, I want to help you with that goal. I might be able to pull some resources together that can get you into a first-time homebuyers program. Or I might be able to connect you with somebody who does credit counseling that can help you get a more favorable rate and make it more affordable for you to get the house that you want. But in addition, I want to personally contribute to that financial goal. Let's identify how much we can get you to this year that would be able to be saved and contributing toward your goal of buying a house, right? So that could be your $50,000 a year employee wants a $10,000 bonus. Well, how do you get them there? Well, that is something that you want to bring them into the fold of, right? You want to be able to reverse engineer through whatever your compensation system is for that employee. Reverse engineer for them, with them, how they can get to that $10,000, right? If they're going to get a bonus that reflects 10% of some number that they have to create for their department and they want $10,000, then you know their department has to achieve $100,000. And you can say the firm goal is X and your department needs to contribute a certain percentage of that, which means each person in your department needs to contribute a certain dollar amount toward that. And your dollar amount is going to be $100,000. So if you're going to get $10,000 of that $100,000, let's figure out what we have to do in order that your department is going to be able to achieve its goal and that you individually are going to be able to achieve your goal of $100,000 in productivity for the firm so that you get that $10,000, right? Then you break it down for them. It becomes concrete, it becomes real, it becomes significant. And through doing that, you don't just give them an avenue to make the money that they want to make, but you also give them a tie-in, like they're directly contributing to the firm's goal. It's not just, I come to work, I work hard, and I go home. So if the firm didn't do well that year, well, I worked hard, right? It's really focusing them in on what they need to achieve in order to hit a very specific goal for the individual that's tied to a goal for the department that's tied to a firm goal, right? So in the way that they see themselves as an individual, they start to see themselves as critical to the firm's success. Because if they don't hit their number, the firm doesn't hit its number. And it's important that people feel that they don't just feel like I come to work, I work hard, and I go home. They feel like I come to work, I contribute toward a very specific goal in order to achieve the firm's goal and in order for me to achieve my goal. And in every one-to-one conversation that the manager has, that is going to be reinforced. The manager is going to say, all right, where are we pacing to hit that $100,000 that you individually need to produce in order to get you to that $10,000, right? So that the person hears the what's in it for me over and over and over again. And if it's something that they had a contributing factor in identifying in the first place, like, you didn't just say, I want you to make an extra 10 grand this year. They said they wanted to make an extra 10 grand this year. They identified what they wanted. You then help them create an avenue to get there. So you are facilitating their dreams, their goals, their aspirations. They are seeing you as a conduit to their own success, but they're also seeing how crucial they are to the firm's success. It's not that the firm is successful with or without you, and if you happen to phone it in 3 or 4 days of the week, so what? The firm will still be successful. Oh, no. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, the firm doesn't get what it's supposed to get. And that also means you won't get the bonus that you desire to get, right? So you have a direct link to being successful through your own efforts. There's a level of determinism and self-determinism that is very important in the human spirit, right? We all have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've talked about it any number of times on this podcast. And at the very top is self-actualization, right? The people who stagnate in life and are the most unhappy are the people who are not achieving their personal goals. They're not setting goals and they're not achieving them. And who are the people that are achieving their goals? The people who set them and the people who then engineer a way to achieve the goal through some mechanism that's known to them, right? It isn't just I wake up one day and I landed my goal. It's that I took specific actions that are on a pathway between where I am and where I desire to be. And that is necessary for people to get up every day and approach their life and approach their goals with gusto. Those are the people that you want working for you. And oftentimes you are the opportunity for them to see that for themselves. And many people, especially lower earning people, people who didn't have the greatest opportunities, people who didn't dream big earlier in their life, they get that opportunity to do that through you. You get to expose them to that. And that really is one of the greatest gifts of being a business owner, that you get to not just effectuate change and success for the life of your clients, but also for your employees. All right. Strategy number 4. When we talk about positive money culture, we would be remiss if we did not talk about clients, right? Because if your business is not serving a sufficient volume of people at a sufficient price point, and we've talked about pricing in recent episodes, you're not going to be able to achieve your financial goals. So it's important that we connect the firm's financial success to client service. Now, that is not just important for your employees. It is important for your employees because many people, I'd say more than not, chose their profession for some reason tied to the outcome for the clients, right? Many of them might have started off with I want to make more money, or I think I would enjoy this type of work. But at some point, they chose a particular practice area because it's tied to something that matters to them. So when you start talking about your clients, it matters to them at a deeper level than you might realize. So I want you to think about this. You know, if you were to start off a conversation and you were talking about your clients and you were to say, when the firm makes X dollars, attorneys have the opportunity to give better service to clients, I want you to think about the why of that. There's several examples that come to mind. So the first example is simply when attorneys are paid well, right? When they feel the economic success that comes with the title and comes with the status and responsibility of being an attorney, they will be better to their clients, right? If I get up every day and I feel resentful and I feel tired and I feel worn out and I feel undercompensated and undervalued, I am not likely to give 1,000% to my clients with a great attitude, with a great level of customer service, reassuring them that I'm here for the long haul. No. I'm going to say, how can I do as little as possible for this person because I'm already not getting much on my end for that, right? There has to be a feeling of give and take, a quid pro quo that comes with the client service piece. But on the flip side, there's also just some mechanistic things that a lot of times staff don't think about that can make you better. I remember once upon a time when I was trying child abuse cases all over the state of New Jersey, I would tell my clients, I'm going to try your case that is 3 hours away from my home, but you're going to put me up in a very nice hotel. I'm going to eat out at a 5-star restaurant or in the hotel restaurant every night, and I am going to get a good night of sleep. Why am I going to do that? Well, the math works out that if I were to charge you my hourly rate to drive 3 hours from my home to the courthouse every day, being in the car 6 hours every day, you are probably going to get a very tired version of me. When I'm in the car, I can't be working on your case, right? I can be thinking about your case, but I can't really be deeply working on it because I got to pay attention to the road. And when I'm in the car, I am charging you to transport me from place to place. Versus if I am staying in a hotel, it can be a $500 a night hotel if I'm charging you $500 an hour. That was what I was charging back in the day, right? If I'm charging you $500 an hour to try your case, $500 for one night is 1 hour of my time. Mathematically, it does not make sense for you to pay for 3 hours of my time to get to the courthouse versus paying 1 hour of my time for me to sleep around the corner from the courthouse, right? So there's just the easy math on that. But even aside from that, even if it was I'm staying in a hotel that is an hour away versus my home that's 2 hours away, well, the math might still make sense, but even if it didn't, what doesn't get factored into that conversation is the thing that really matters, right? Which is if I am taken care of, if I am well rested, if I am having a luxurious night in a deep, luxurious bubble bath, if I am eating a 5-star meal prepared by a chef, it's time I'm not cooking. It's time I'm not time I'm not tensely rushing through a shower. I am relaxing my body. I'm getting myself psychologically prepared. When I am taking care of myself, I am a better version of myself for you, for judges, for juries, for adversaries, for everyone that encounters me. I'm on my A game, right? And that attitude is something that you can import when you have more resources. So in the previous scenario I just gave you, that would be a situation where the client is paying more. But in a law firm, you can absolutely provide this. Now, you can provide it at cost to your clients or not, your choice. But you can have your attorneys driven to court proceedings or settlement conferences that are across town or in hectic traffic and simply relieve them of the stress of having that to do, because you can afford to build that into the model of how you ultimately take care of your attorneys who are taking care of your clients, right? If I'm sitting in the backseat of a limo or a Cadillac or a nice car, whatever it is, while I'm being transported, I'm not worried about the stop and go traffic. I'm not worried about rush hour and all those things. That's somebody else's job. I am simply sitting and preparing as I'm being transported to where I'm going. My client gets more of my attention. They get more of my focus, right? That provides for a greater likelihood of the outcome that my client desires. When we see that the firm's financial success affords that, we see more of a value in achieving the firm's financial success. So for the paralegal or the legal assistant or the file clerk or whomever it is you're talking to, when they connect lawyer being able to just focus and lawyer and being a sharper, well-rested, well-fed version of him or herself for the client, then the clients that they are building relationships with, that they are serving through whatever they do in your business, are going to get a better service and hence a greater chance at the outcome they desire. And for people that genuinely care about the work that they're doing, that's going to matter to them. All right, fifth and final strategy. When we talk about financial success, the firm's financial success isn't just tied to serving clients, it's tied to how many clients we serve. And this is something that, again, is really important for the mission-driven individual. So when you are talking to your team about the firm's financial success, you want to talk about the mission of your law firm, right? When you tell people, I do this because this genuinely matters. We are making a difference. We're serving society. We're helping the underdog. We're fighting the good fight. Whatever it is that matters to you. Business law, immigration law, cannabis law, does not matter. Whatever it is that you are doing, that you have a passion for, that led you to want to do it full time for yourself, by yourself, with yourself, creating resources for yourself in your own business, that is something that you created that attracts people that you now employ. So even if your employees don't yet have the level of tenacity and dedication to what you do, you haven't given them the opportunity to truly have that until you start pouring your vision, your mission, your values into your company for your employees to absorb. And one of the things that makes for not just success for the individual, but success for that mission that you are going to pour into your company is when you talk about serving more people with that purpose, right? So if you are a business owner and you say, hey, my business accomplishes X for this type of person, and when we are more financially successful, we can spend more money to market to more people, to get our message out bigger and broader across our spectrum so that we can serve more people, that becomes a value in and of itself, right? So Susie, the file clerk, might not get out of bed and work a little bit harder when it's just for the paycheck. But when she knows that she is helping a particular class of client who she's interacted with, who came into the office, and she thinks, wow, we do such great work for the clients. I really wish more people could have access to this. Well, how do more people get access to it? The more successful you become, the more desirable you are to the marketplace, and hence the more people will want to work with you. The more clients will want to work with you, the more you will generate referrals. And that works universally, right? That principle is not specific to law. That principle is specific to the human nature, right? Everyone wants what everyone wants, right? That's why paying attention to things is something that we do in the collective. That's the reason why we have rubbernecking on the side of the road when there's an accident. It's the reason why everybody wants the captain of the football team, right? People do not want the captain of the Parcheesi club. Not because Parcheesi is not a great game, so you Parcheesi players don't come for me, right? But the captain of the football team is the star. Everyone wants the star. And when everyone wants something, everyone else wants what everyone wants. So you have to remember that general principle. And just keep in mind, when you become more successful, you attract more people who will want to work with you. And that means more success for your company, which ties into all the other things we've been talking about, right? It ties into the financial success of the company, which ties into rewards that you can give to your team. It ties into your team being able to achieve their personal goals. It ties into your having increased expenses in your business, which then necessitates you hitting those financial goals. It ties into every person giving greater service to the clients because you have greater resources to afford that. And it ties into serving more clients so that your mission, your vision, and your values are brought to life through all that you're doing, and your team will be aware of that. All right, everybody, you have been listening to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast. I'm Allison Williams, your host, and I'll see you on our next episode.